we've gotten away from the cult of the Turkish getup. You've heard me say that, haven't you? You both heard me say that, haven't you?
Right.
Just it's an exercise. It's not a religion. There are no apostates. There's no monastery somewhere in the southern part of Utah where you climb a mountain doing Turkish get-ups all the way up the hill, which would be a hell of an idea. And I came up with it. And don't steal it from me. So
It's happening.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, I think a good, like a well-done Turkish getup has a lot of value. When you start going crazy on it, I think you lose its value.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. We have a very special guest for you. We have world-renowned strength coach, very popular with kettlebells, weightlifting, sports-specific conditioning as well. Master RKC, Mr. Dan John, he's with us to the Movement Hub podcast. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Josh. It's good to see you, man. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
The only time I ever see is 8 a.m. trying to get some coffee down so I can wake up and go teach. Yeah, so it's good to see you.
Right, that is true. And we usually get like the big jug of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. So There you go. All right. So let's start off with introducing yourself. What's basically your background for those that are unaware of what you do, like your elevator speech on?
They'll figure out if I'm an idiot. Don't. I've written a lot of books on weightlifting. I've been a professor at a couple different universities. I started lifting weights in 1965, and I started coaching in 1979. And I think I work really hard on kind of renewing my knowledge a lot. I think that puts me at odds with a lot of people in the field, Josh. I think, for example, somebody got on me this weekend. I was doing a workshop for the U.S. Army, and there's certain exercises, I don't like, right? And it's just funny because the same guy in 3 years, it'll be some other BS exercise that just showed up, and or some piece of equipment, or I guess I'm not as kind as I used to be because I'm just kind of tired of the fads. I still like to put weights in the ground, put them overhead, pick them up, carry them. And honestly, if you can find a better way of getting strong than to put weights over your head and pick them up and carry them, I'd like to know. I'm all ears. I don't want to hear about walking, so I'm walking backwards up a curb,
I've been seeing so many people have been doing that recently around.
Yeah, and it's great. And you know what? Everything has value. But, if you can military press 300, deadlift 600, and carry double body weight for, 15, 20 miles, you're strong. You probably don't need to do burpees, to prove you're strong after that, or whatever. But so there you go. That's good enough. Let's get started.
Well, I feel like that's a little bit of foreshadowing because we're actually going to get into these pet peeves of yours and also mine. And I like to dwell deep into that. But that's further into the interview. But I wanted to ask, a big part that I watched like the past couple of weeks were the Olympics. How was the Olympics for you? Now that it's now completed, do you have any takeaways from this past Olympic competition? And how does it fare with like the past Olympics that you've seen previously?
Interesting. During the lifting section, I had a weightlifting meet. And at the meet, we were discussing the fact that the Olympic lifting is down to 5 weight classes. And somebody asked my opinion, and I said, I think what's going to save the Olympic lifts is getting back to 5 classes, so that we have competitions. Not everybody needs a gold medal. So one of the things I liked about the Olympics is that, they're playing hardball with Olympic lifting, and I like it. I think their answer. I was very impressed with Val Allman, winning 2 Olympic golds in the discus back to back. Her technique is breathtaking, and I thought that was great. I thought I have a hard time with we still don't know what's happening women's floor exercise in the gymnastics. They're still arguing over it. What I love about my sports I lifted more than you. I win. I threw farther than you. I win.
That is as objective as you can find.
And it's not always perfect. And the funny thing is, in the men's shot put, second silver and bronze both threw the exact same mark, and it went back to second best throw, and everybody knew the rules. The Chinese throw, I think it was a Chinese throw. It might have been. If I got it wrong, I apologize. He didn't run up, he didn't start complaining because that's the rule. And I liked it. So I liked, and the other thing I did do, Josh, I thought was a good idea. I got that Peacock station where I just had the 4. So
yeah, I got that too. You can see every single sport, every single event.
And I mean, sometimes, they'd pull away, but what was nice is I watched a lot of handball, which I think is a beautiful game. I like handball. It'd be kind of fun. You'd have the Nordic teams playing handball up here. There'd be a women's soccer match here. There'd be track and field here. And it was kind of fun. I think that's the way the Olympics should be. The Americans,
like a multi-screen type thing.
The Americans have always had the worst Olympic coverage because our sports, ABC, CBS, NBC, whoever, basically funds a major portion of the Olympics. And so we people in the United States get killed by that. What in the Montreal Olympics, they had 3 stations. The Canadians had 3 stations. This is 76. And they had a camera. They had a camera at archery, and it just showed you the event. There was no one going, this is the young Danish boy. Funny story about him. When he was 7 years old, he had a blister on his finger. And sometimes I just want to watch the event, man,
Right.
I was very impressed. I did think it was interesting. I am fascinated about the fact that American basketball, struggles to win. It's like, I barely watch any of the games. And the other thing too is, how can we be so bad in 3-on-3 basketball? Oh God, you can go to any playground in America and find 3 better players than we had on the men's side. That was pathetic. They had a 200-year-old man, some guy who played down here in Provo. I don't even think he knew the rules. I'm not sure he knew the rules of the game,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It'd be like America going to the Olympics and losing baseball. Oh, wait, we did that. Okay, so there you go. Yeah. I love
I do feel like the rest of the world is catching up in basketball. I like a little disparity. I feel like some nations do dominate. Like you have the Chinese, a lot of Chinese dominate in weightlifting and in table tennis. So I feel like there's not much disparity from that. This was a big year for track and field for the Americans. Not a really big showing for Jamaican track and field. It was kind of disappointing to watch.
Won the men's discus, man.
They first Jamaican throwing medal, from what I understand.
So I remember when the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, the DDR, did so well in the 76 Olympics. But then I read a great article after about, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. You mentioned, okay, so the Chinese are very good at diving. The Chinese are very good at, there are some sports they're very good at. And what they're good at, they are very good at. And then, boom, there's a big fall off. You could probably argue the same about every country. But one other thing too, to watch a Pakistani win the javelin and the guy from India take second, I've been telling my throwers for years that they should study cricket to be javelin throwers, not baseball. And I thought that was amazing. It was just kind of fun to see I felt like this was the first Olympics that seemed really like a worldwide event. And keeping the commies,
No, you're right. You say what you want here.
Eating the Russians out is always a good idea. I remember he still coaches. I think it's funny. If there's Americans in the audience, he has one talk, but there's not Americans, he has another. And he famously said, and my buddy James was there listening, he said, when an athlete comes to him and they don't improve because of little pills, 10 meters, he knows they've already been using them. A 10-meter improvement in the hammer, discus, or javelin, those are stunning numbers. But I'm glad those guys are gone. And hats off to the Ukrainians. I mean, I thought it was pretty impressive. You know, the Ukrainian high jumpers did so well, and they did so well in so many sports, considering what's going on in their homes. And so, hats off.
Right. I got a question for you, Dan.
Sure.
So now that we're talking about all these different sports that the Olympics hold when it comes to swimming, you have floor exercise for gymnastics, you have basketball, you have discus throw and Olympic weightlifting. Now, I kind of see that there's a divide in the middle where there's brute force, strength, and power when it comes to that specific sport in the Olympics. And then you have the finesse side, which would be like, the swimming, the diving and the floor exercise. On the category of just brute force, power, and strength, what was the most impressive Olympic battle that you saw during this past Olympics?
It's going to sound weird, but I'm just going to, you got to give hats off to Ryan Krauser. Winning 3 gold medals in the shot put is unheard of. And number 2, he'd been injured all year, blown pec and a bad knee. So it was pretty impressive, And I mean, when Al Order got 4 golds in the discus, his first gold medal in 56, he threw 184, which is a good collegiate throw today. Krauser's been having to throw in the high 70s, 22, 23 meters plus. I mean, just to even sniff, you had to throw 22 meters. I mean, just to, get a sense of things. I mean, those are big throws. And to do that 3 Olympics in a row. So that would be my vote. And then I thought the attempt, I don't remember his name just fell out of my head, but the American who got the bronze in weightlifting when he took a run at the world record in the clean and jerk. I kind of like that moment because it was just like, all right, it was kind of cool.
Do or die.
Okay, let's go play. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So as I'm watching the Olympics, I would consider myself like a normal viewer where I'm just like watching anything that's viewing. Yeah. Why do you think that the discus throw, the shot put, the javelin throw, all of those different sports aren't as popularized as the other sports like basketball, volleyball, swimming? Why do you think there's no publicity on that?
Well, here's one thing. Sadly, I had to listen to commentators during the shot put, and they kept talking about this. Look at the size of that guy, but it still has the ability to stay in the ring. And then when our females throwers come up and people make shots on their body types, I find in 2024 that a commentator commenting on the body types, especially on the female side, but even on the men's side, is just, to me, that's a firing offense. And it's one step from saying she's a charming negress. I mean, it's, or whatever your ethnic background is, tossing that into your performance. I just find it stunning. And I'm not like some woohoo, guy, Josh will tell you that, but I just find that shocking in this day and age that they still talk about,
it gets all the clicks, Dan. Like that's what people want to talk about, and it makes people polarized. So
yeah, but I would say, and also too, we're not, because of the way they show the events. We were able in the '92 Olympics to watch the men's shot put. It must have been a mistake of some kind, but the men's shot put, they showed every single throw, on the finals, every trials, top 8, all 8 throwers got 3. We watched all 24, and people I knew who didn't understand the shot put, but when you got to see the whole thing, one guy moves up, the other guys drop back, and then he pulls it out. Boom. Mike Stoltz, PR, personal record. It was so exciting. People who were with me who didn't know the event got into it. Honestly, if all they showed was the last shot in every NBA game, and here we go, Washington Wizards, here's a final layup of the game, final score 192-81, the Wizards lose. And now back to, who would?
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I watch highlights from track and field.
Interesting. I think the other thing too with track and field and javelin throw and discus throw and shot put, I think a lot of people who have done any kind of sport hasn't tried specifically throwing a ball, throwing a disc, throwing a javelin. I think a lot of people have ran in their life at least, so they know how hard it is to run 100 meters in less than or around 9 seconds. So I think that a lot of people, if they tried actually picking up that, do you call it a ball, Dan? The metal ball that you throw in shot put?
The shot.
The shot. So the shot, if people actually picked up the shot and tried throwing it, I think there would be much more appreciation for the sport.
Yeah. It's interesting because the shot put is probably the most recent of the events. The javelin, of course, from warfare. The discus is the only Olympic sport mentioned in the Bible, and it's also mentioned in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Ulysses wins the discus competition. The hammer came from broken cart wheels. You know what? So you got an old cart, the hub with the the metal end, and if you call it the stone put, it's ancient. But if you call it the shot put, that was from from the cannons. So yeah. Another event that I think that people, I loved watching the steeplechase and the 400 intermediate, where you're watching someone exhausted still have to be technically proficient. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like someone got knocked out. I think it was a Kenyan that got knocked out on the steeplechase on the last hurdle.
Yeah.
To be carted off. And he was like in the top 3 also. He was gonna podium. But Dan, let's discuss, we're gonna discuss about weight training for mere mortals like ourselves. But let's talk, let's say 4 years down the road, 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. What does it take? If you could give us an idea based on your background training, collegiate, national, multiple world champions, what would it take for an elite athlete to get to a podium 4 years from now? Okay,
for one thing, it's already too late, but we'll
Josh is trying to train for it, by the way.
I'm getting
he's asking for himself.
I'm getting into breakdancing, but they canceled it on me. So my dreams are like now crushed.
So there's no question. The two pillars to start off with are geography and genetics. Okay. The greatest sprinters in the world come from a country where sprinting is the national sport. That's Jamaica. Usain Bolt, if he'd have been, I always say this, if he'd have been raised in West Texas, he'd have been a underperforming wide receiver that, the coach cut off the team. But you have him in a country where sprinting is the national sport. He's also the youngest of 6, I think. And we know from research that the youngest child has real advantages, by the way, because you're always chasing your brothers and sisters.
Interesting.
So, Usain Bolt's a very good example. You have to have the genetics. He's 6'4" and built to sprint, but you also have to have the geography. So if you're a 5'10", massively explosive kid, you live in Canada, you're a hockey player, Iowa, you wrestle, Bulgaria, you Olympic lift. So
interesting.
So you got to have those two pillars talking about first. You don't see a lot of basketball players at the highest level. When I used to work for this team called Utah Jazz, they're a professional basketball team, probably knows that.
I've heard of them.
It always cracks me up when people thought that John Stockton was small. Well, Josh, you've seen me, right? I mean, I'm a big guy, right? I mean, John.
Yeah. You definitely shadow over people.
Yeah, John towered over me, and his hands, are frying pan sized. So even a guy who looks small in the NBA is still the biggest, best athlete you ever met in your life. So the DNA side and the geography side I'd put first. In fact, I say those are, now, if you come from a country where you have sports, there's real advantages. North Korea, China, some other countries, there's real advantages to the way they do things. In fact, I was just reading an article years ago. I had a little newsletter called Get Up. In 2004, we had a report from the Chinese Olympic team. A guy was allowed to go in there, and he just wrote me this long letter about all the stuff he saw. And even back then, most of the Chinese Olympic lifting team at the time, I'm sure it's true, these were kids from really poor places that were giving their family and themselves opportunities to make it to the next level. In the same way that, you could say a lot of sports in America, my concern about soccer, football, American soccer, why are we bad? In America, soccer is a rich kid sport. Nowhere else in the world is it a rich kid sport. And so we really, little Cindy's on a club and the shirt says elite and, they have $2,000, uniforms, kits. But what really makes a country great at something is when people will do anything to be great in the sport, to raise themselves out. I remember as a kid, of course, it was interesting. In my life, I've watched the sport of boxing. Boxing was probably, when I was young, it might have been the third most popular sport. It had gone baseball, probably college football, and then number 3 was boxing. Would anybody say that anymore? I mean,
no.
When's the last time you said, let's get together for the big fight this weekend? There was a time where I could have named you every single top 10 boxer, and it wasn't like I was a boxing fan. You just knew it. Well, of course, it was Ali, Foreman, Frazier. It was a little different, Norton. But there was a time, in fact, people in my family did it to get ahead. You jumped in a ring and you beat the hell out of somebody, and you incurred concussions and even death to do it, but you did it because you need the money. And so that's the next element. Sports, state sponsorship, or as we do here in the United States, commercial sponsorships. There's no question that Biles, the gymnast, is going to make a lot more cash with her career because she's a gymnast than Val Allman did because she's a discus thrower. There's no question about it. If I said the name Mary Lou Retton, there'd be a lot of people on this thing that'd be going, who? But she was 84 Olympian, and she won the gold medal in the 84 Olympics. She still probably, does, probably still has a commercial success because of that. Where, when you talk about the American Olympians like John Powell and Mac Wilkins, you've never heard of either of them. So how we state sponsor versus commercial sponsorship versus having rich parents, or remember the movie Foxcatcher about wrestling, Okay. So you can also do that private, the American collegiate system has boosted the Olympics forever. And, hopefully the NCAA will have some wisdom and, not just turn into a college, semi-pro college, football. That would be the next level. And then after that is you just need a host. You need enough participants so that you boom, weed out, boom, weed out, boom, weed out. And if you're missing any of that, you'll notice I didn't say much about computers and equipment, and I didn't say much about coaching either. But you need those big things first, and then you can worry about, this or that. I was watching so it would have been the 96 Olympic champion. I was watching a video of him talking about his throws. And it was just funny because nothing has changed really in the shot put since 96. Obviously things, you're always the minor details, but the technique he used is the technique he got from Brian Oldfield from 75. 1975 is going to be 50 years ago, very soon. And we're still using the same techniques. In the discus throw, we're using the techniques from 1961 from the Utah State University. And I got to tell you, in the javelin throw, I would say there are probably some 1960s Olympians who would still make the final in the jav. In the hammer throw, it's completely changed. But there's some great athletes who would have figured that out. When you look at the sports that are static, and my favorite one, there's a couple. The high jump is static, but the long jump is clearly static. Okay. Let me give you 3 names. Jesse Owens, Bob Beamon, Mike Powell. You're welcome. There's the best 3 jumpers in history. Jesse Owens, 36 Olympic Games. It's static. David Epstein does a nice thing about the difference between Usain Bolt and Jesse Owens at the Olympics. And he goes like this. That's the difference. but Jesse Owens had a little trowel to dig his starting block, and he ran on dirt. Yeah, I just, would Jesse Owens have won the Olympics this year? I don't really know. But one of the cool things about track and field is we're nudging right up on humanity's best. We're not, and that's one of the reasons I like it so much, because when Randy Matson threw 70 feet for the first time in the shot put, it was Randy and then 4 and 5 feet lower everybody else. Well, now international contests, obviously you got Ryan Krauser. He's pretty special, but even so, and it's not just one person pushing him. There's 7 or 8 people who could, depending on how things turn out, could win the event. You saw that in the men's discus. I would not want to gamble on track and field at the next Olympics. That little chart, you have to try, is it the trifecta? We have to get 3 right. I don't know how you'd pull that off, because it's so, maybe on the women's side, 1 or 2 events like the hurdles, you might have had a shot, but man, and because we're not just one outlier, this is happening in the sports. And like we said earlier about basketball, the United States was an outlier in basketball. And now we got to put on our A game to beat South Sudan.
Right. That is true.
Right. So as you're kind of speaking about how all these Olympic athletes are just getting to the highest performance of competing, now you see that everybody's just winning by a hair, by a fraction of a second. Much, yeah. What do you think is the practices that Olympic athletes now need to do to outperform the other Olympic athletes by beating them even by that split second? Like, how much faster can you run 100-meter run?
That's
like there's at this point, I'm assuming Usain Bolt's going to hold that for life until somebody beats him. But what do you think it takes for Olympic athletes or athletes that you've even trained for in your lifetime to push that barrier and push that envelope?
So the first thing is I use the yin yang symbol. So you have to build up that strength and power component.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to build up the technical expertise, let's say. And inside the yin yang and those 2 little dots, so there is a need in the weight room to do some specific exercises that make a discus thrower throw the discus far, and a javelin thrower, and they're going to be different. Pole vaulter, what he needs to use in the weight room is going to be different, slightly. It's still going to be the basics. And then on the other side, out on the field of play, there's a circle in there where at some level we either have to put, I use weight vests. I use overweight implements. You got to have a little bit of strength training out on the technical field of play. That's still the best model I use. If all you do is lift weights, I say you have a flat tire, because you've got the technical side. You got the strength side, but no technique. If all you do is throw or jump or whatever, then you're a flat tire this way. So over a career, I try to bring that circle bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's real obvious when I say it. It'll be interesting because, when you have somebody who doesn't know, like a parent very often will go online when their kid becomes a thrower, jumper, hurdler, and say something stupid like, well, I don't know if you know this, but Ryan Krauser does this exercise. You just want to go, oh.
And your why son,
he does burpees and like, yeah. Your son can't do that or this 3 throws in a row, but you want to do this highly technical skill thing. So you really have to think almost like, I make this joke a lot at workshops. It goes over most people's heads, but it's important. If we had a kindergartner and we brought in every single assignment that this kid would have to do from kindergarten, 1st through 8th grade, high school, and college, and just showed him in a room all the paper he's going to have to fill out, all the forms, all the assignments, a little 5-year-old would freak out and run out screaming, right? Right?
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, just do this, just do this, just do that. But if I take a kindergarten and I say, here's a song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we teach them the alphabet. I hope I didn't throw you off there, Joff. you know that song, right?
I can follow along. Yes,
He falls off after Jay, but
didn't want to lose you. But yeah, and then you put letters together, you spell cab, because that's the first three letters of the alphabet, and then you write words, and then you make sentences, then you make like a paragraph, then you have a letter to your mom about how much you love her for Mother's Day, and there's all these, and then it becomes, I don't know if you guys have kids, but the pride a kid has when they read for the first time a book without pictures. My kids called them chapter books. Dad, I read a chapter book. It was such a big deal. Now, when I say that out loud, everyone just kind of leans in and goes, yeah, that's pretty obvious. And yet you told me I had to get you into breakdancing Olympic gold in 4 years. Little brother, I need 16.
You lost your chance, Josh.
Yeah.
So I knew they were going to bring it back. Flag football's coming in, so we got to get ready for that.
Yeah, so you're going to play in the NFL in 4 years. That makes sense. So even okay, let's go back to my example I just gave you. I mean, how many dads have I worked with? I'll be standing around the game. Dad will come over. You see that thing the Green Bay Packers did? You ought to put that in. The guy who threw the ball 80 yards in the air and then hit a guy who runs a 4.140. You want me to put that play in? Well, because my goal as an American football coach is not have my quarterback cry during a game, and you want him to throw 80 yards. I mean, I've gone into games with quarterbacks who I'm not sure could throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage with their arms. And you want me to do this thing you saw. So I would say that if you don't mind, I know I gave you a lot of analogies there, but that's the idea. You really have to, it's foundation upon foundation, layer upon layer upon layer. You got to take your time. You have to throw in small meets where you fight to win. I throw 102 feet, 7 inches in the discus. Josh, you get ahead of me with a 104 throw. My best throw of my life was 102, but it's my last throw. I have to figure out a way to add 1.5 feet to win. Okay. 10 years later, we're both over 200 feet, and I have to figure out a way to throw 3 more feet to win. And that's what so you need that process. And if you want to call it the grind, I'm fine with that, but you need all those little things, and you need to be exposed to higher end, and that so you can go back and practice the things you missed. I had a guy from Ireland come visit me one time, and he watched, we have these Utah elite soccer teams. And he said, these kids couldn't play in a street game when double because they're only 1-footed. They only kicked with the right foot. Well, what was wrong with the program these kids were in, they never had a chance to be exposed to the fact that they weren't balanced left leg, right leg. They were doing all these things and wearing all these nice clothes and getting these big trophies, but they weren't very good. So part of the reason you want to sneak up in competition. So I want to expose you to better competition. Frankly, I want to get your butt kicked so that when I say next year, I go, well, remember what happened? Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you didn't, and then I fill in the blanks. You weren't strong enough. You weren't powerful enough. Your technique wasn't consistent enough. Okay.
Right. So basically you want to be a small fish in a big pond rather than a big fish in a small pond. Always putting yourself in challenges.
Yeah. You want to, but there's a time to be the big fish, small pond. And that's good because you can really, maybe there's a time in a career where you just want to have a nice base. So this is who I am. But then you want to leap out and see what's going on really. Yeah.
Yeah. Not everything has to be a life or death match.
Yeah.
So then let's transition into talking about kettlebells. As Master RKC and pioneer, and you witnessed the rise of popularity over the past couple decades. How do you see kettlebell culture today? What do you make of it, and where do you see it going in the future?
I do have some concerns. One of the things, and if you just look there, that's, see all those books right there. Those are all the kettlebell books, and there's a lot more, in here. 20 years ago, Josh, you and I could be, smoking a couple cigarettes at a bar, and I could say to you, Let's do a book, Kettlebell for, wait staff, and there'll be exercises on how to carry pitchers of beer over. That thing would have sold, man. Kettlebells for, kettlebells for bartending. There was a problem with some of the early years that it was a little bit, culty is an overstatement, but there was a lot of support for ideas that weren't well thought through, because you're Josh, you did this thing, so he must know what he's doing, so let's pop it in there. There was a real problem in the beginning, especially with standards of performance and standards about what is, strong, not strong. Big, what I'm saying? We didn't have a ladder to approach, as terrible as the split between Strong First and the RKC was. And I do think a lot of friendships got destroyed. A lot of good information got lost. A lot of people got, dropped in the cracks. But one of the things is, instead of going to an RKC with 75 assistants, all of a sudden I'm at an RKC with me and you, and thank God Marco showed up to help us out, and there's Jeffrey Good. All of a sudden I had to be proficient at every single thing we're doing. I had to be on task. I couldn't fold my arms and just let you go on for 3 hours on the Turkish get-up, because we don't have 3 hours. We have to be better. So I think one of the things I like about the last, especially 5 or 6 years, is I think we've gotten a lot clearer about the big six, about the way we teach it, about what we're looking for. We've gotten rid of, if you were at an RKC and decided to add a bit of flair to the snatch test, every single rep has to have a woohoo. It would be that we'd be teaching that in the next week, now things have settled down. There's not as much noise, which I like. And now we can start talking about things. Will the kettlebell survive? I think what's going to help the kettlebell is the goblet squat, the swing, and the one-handed press family. I think in the same way, I think suspension trainers, if you use suspension trainers for T, Y, I, and one-arm rows, I think you're using suspension trainers for what they do best. I think if you use the ab wheel as an ab wheel, I think you're using for what it does best. I think what kettlebells are best at is the swing, the goblet squat, and the one-arm bench press, the one-arm press family, even alternating. I think it's a real good tool for pressing. From the swing, you can, tie it into the snatch. But I think those would be I think that's what we'll hang our hat on in a few years. Now, obviously you could just say, well, what about the Turkish get-up? Well, we've gotten away from the cult of the Turkish get-up. You've heard me say that, haven't you? You both heard me say that, haven't you? Right. Just it's an exercise. It's not a religion. There are no apostates. There's no monastery somewhere in the southern part of Utah where you climb a mountain doing Turkish get-ups all the way up the hill, which would be a hell of an idea. And I came up with it. I don't steal it from me. So
it's happening.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, I think a good, a well done Turkish get-up has a lot of value. When you start going crazy on it, I think you lose its value. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Now, yes, and I'm assuming over the years, I guess what you're trying to say is like the RKC or other hardstyle certifications would eliminate addition by subtraction, so to say. Let's talk about a common pet peeve that you and I actually have in common. And I want to discuss about the rise of dead cleans, dead snatches, I guess mimicking the Olympic movements with kettlebells.
They're not.
Okay. How do you think this rose in popularity?
The difference between snatching a 24K and snatching 142.5, which is 314, which is my best snatch. Don't put those two things together. You can
I
lose your
put it.
life
Yeah.
throwing that kind of weight over your head. I think if you're going to do dead clean, dead snatch, that's a dumbbell exercise. It's a dumbbell exercise. Back in the early aughts, in fact, I discussed it in at least in one article. I know for sure that I actually thought there was value to it. The problem is with these deads is that the shoulder goes boom. It traffic accidents every single drop. Now, you probably have listeners who are rolling their eyes right now saying, well, I could do that. And that's true. Hi, I'm Dan John. I'm 67. And I probably can do that too until it doesn't work. And then I have a hard time sleeping. I go see Mike, my physical therapist, and he slaps me on the forehead and says, you're too stupid to keep doing this. The kettlebell the swing is a swing, the clean is a swing, the snatch is a swing. That's what a kettlebell is. If you're going to do dead stop, just slide over to the dumbbell. But again, use the tool as you're supposed to use it. Generally, if you do that, not only are you safe in the weight room, but you generally get a lot of work done and get results.
Right. Dan, so I'm sure you're pretty aware about the trending style of training right now, which is hybrid training, where you're trying to do two different kind of training methods and you put it together. Now, I'm going to assume that this is going to also catch on with kettlebells because there's a lot of people who don't solely do kettlebell training, and there's a lot of people who don't just solely lift dumbbells and barbells. Now, as you see the rise, hopefully we do see it, where kettlebells are being integrated into training programs for all these other people who are into fitness. What do you think are the handful of exercises you think should catch on when it comes to taking exercises from the kettlebell community and putting into their program? What do you think those exercises
First
are?
one, I would say, the goblet squat. The upside of the goblet squat, you can take one bell out to a field, you gobble squat it 8 times, you sprint away, walk back. Gobble squat it 8 times, sprint away, throw it, sprint, and walk back. When we started doing that, and I did it, well, on the cover of Never Let Go, um, what most people don't realize is that my left hand is in a cast. So I came up with a lot of this stuff to deal with my own personal inability to put weights on my head because I destroyed my left wrist. So what we call those lift and sprints. You do and by the way, swings are great too. To me, that's the kind of hybrid I like, where you're doing squats followed by sprints. I know online. In fact, that one, there was a guy who was talking about a 500-pound deadlift running a marathon. I haven't heard from, you don't often hear long term people who do this kind of thing. What do you think happens? But I would say the goblet squat and the swing and the press, those are the three that, but what I want you to think though, is taking them somewhere else, taking them to the beach and running hills, sandy hills. You ever done a workout at a beach or a park? In fact,
on lockdown.
Best place to swing, I would say.
Yeah.
You could actually,
on lockdown, that's all you needed.
Back when I was in California, we wrote this. It's the Coyote Point Kettlebell Club. And it's free on my website, folks. But this was a group of people, and all we were is a collection of kettlebellers in 2010, 11, and 12 who used to meet in a park every Tuesday afternoon and train. Some of the best training I've ever came up with is to make sure we get workouts there. And the interesting thing is sometimes not a lot of people would show up. And so we'd have people with kettlebells wouldn't show up. So we'd have 2 kettlebells, a rubber mat, and lots of food and water. Well, we'd have to figure out a workout to work with that. And I got to tell you, it's still some of the best training of my career, especially up here training, where you have to fix a problem in real time. Yeah.
All right, Dan. This has been a very informative, definitely an informative interview. I would like to wrap this up in a series of rapid fire questions. If you could kindly let us know what you think in a couple sentences or two, or if you want to talk more about it, we could definitely do that. All right. So whenever you're ready, we're going to get started. So first rapid fire question we have: What does Dan John listen to while he is training?
Bossa Nova.
Oh, not so different. All right.
Well, wasn't a joke.
Favorite? Oh, you really listen to Bossa Nova?
Yeah, I think I fell in love with Bossa Nova when I was 7 or 8. I think Frank Sinatra's album with Jobim, Antonio Jobim, is one of the greatest albums of all time. Big fan of it. I also today we had Mel Torme on, which was funny because my little thing just slid over to that, which was fun. But I don't believe you should have in the weight room. Your music should, if you need exterior motivation, you're in the wrong world. If you have to have your jam on, you're in the wrong place.
Favorite city to teach?
Huh. That's not a bad question. That's not bad.
Gotta make this one count.
Odense, Denmark, followed by Essex, England.
Essex, England. Best fitness book to read, and if you could follow that up with a non-fitness book.
Whoa, that's okay. So, gentle listener, are they watching?
And none that you wrote. I know you wrote a bunch, and I know that your name's on it. So.
This is just, this is just part of my library. Okay, man. All right. That's just part of it. All right. I have a lot of book. Best fitness book.
You gotta choose one. Gotta choose one.
Okay. I'll cheat on this. Right there over there. It's called Track and Field Omnibook. And it is from 1970, or maybe 70. And not only was J.K. Doherty just a great coach, and you don't have to read it for the track and field stuff. You read it for the coaching stuff and how he talks about like year-round and in-season training. By the way, that same book, Ralph Mon from the Utah State University is quoted how to train athletes year-round, and that's the book that made me go to Utah State.
Here's a follow-up question on that one.
What? And on the other book,
The Sword and the Stone.
So I retyped the entire book and commented on it. I have 250,000 words in a file in my computer of my notes. 250,000 words. So if you don't like The Sword and the Stone, here's let me give you a couple other ideas. If you haven't read The Godfather, I think it's a modern classic. I think it stands up. Oh, this is always tough. Brothers Karamazov, but that might be a little too for your people. Dune. If you can read don't read any of the other ones. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt your brain by reading any of the other. Dune's a great book.
Yes, Dune.
And I would say this too. And sadly, the movies are terrible. But I think The Hobbit is one of those you put in your pocket and read.
All right. What is Dan John's death row meal?
Dan John's death row meal?
You can have multiple courses if you want. A nice little dessert, maybe a wine pairing.
All the stuff. It would be French toast and pancakes. Two foods I can't eat. Two foods I never eat because they make me fat and dumb. Yeah.
You talked about a couple of movies, I say, like Dune and Godfather.
Those are books too. Yeah.
What is one movie that everyone should see before they die?
Moonstruck. Moonstruck might be the most perfect movie I've ever seen. It's Cher. It's amazing. I would include, it's hard to watch, but Robin Williams, The Fisher King, painful. He's so good. I would say The Freshman, which is two Matthew Broderick movies, The Freshman and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which, is a must. If you like romantic movies, I would throw Moonstruck and Brigadoon in there. And if you just want and a movie I like a lot that might not fit your audience, but How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Yeah.
I will jot all these down. All right. And last question I have for you. Would you do the 10,000 swing challenge or The Secret Service snatch test.
Oh, this challenge is easy. I mean, I did that with COVID, and Nate Huey and I did it. I think you may have met Nate. It's close if you haven't. You will someday. But I would do 500 swings with Nate, and we had it on Instagram Live, and we recorded it. I had COVID, and then I would fall on the couch and sleep for 3 hours. The Secret Service snatch test. Now, I did it the way you're supposed to do it. So I pressed the beast, put that down, walked over, and did the 200 snatches with the 24. So you're supposed to have done it in a half hour. That was the original RKC2. I got to tell you, man. So because I was able to burst. I think I got to 125, right around the 5-minute mark. Because I don't know how you guys would do it, but I knew I was chasing fatigue. I mean, I know my skill set. Holy cow. 75 reps in 5 minutes. Oh God. I mean, just trying to figure out how you can save, and the 24 kilo isn't heavy, but when you're at rep 160 and they're going, you have 2 minutes. Oh, you got to pull 40 out of somewhere, man. That was hard. I got to tell you, that was hard. Yeah.
Did everybody have to pass the 200 snatches back then for the RKC2?
Nope. No. They all said we're going to do it. I did it to see if I could, and then they never went with it. So I like the idea at the RKC. So, you guys get there Saturday morning, I tell you how wonderful I am, and I introduce you to Josh and everybody. And then I'd love it. Okay, gentlemen, come over here, press the beast. Okay, now, gentlemen, come over here and snatch that 200 times. Oh, good, you passed. We'll move on. Now let me teach you for the rest of the weekend because you're done testing. Now, I like it.
Manny, did you have a follow-up question? Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to follow up. I have actually one rapid fire question and a follow-up question. So as a writer yourself then, and through all the books that you've mentioned to us, some of them dating back to 1950s, 1960s, and now we're in 2024. What do you think is the biggest difference on writing styles, in particular to fitness books from back in the day, which is in like 50s, 60s, 70s, to like nowadays? What's the big difference in that?
That's a shockingly good question, and don't take my rudeness rudely.
I try my best.
But this is the Harry Pascal books are some of my favorites. With Pascal and these guys, they always had that sarcastic humor. And I tend to follow them more. And here you need to, don't be embarrassed if this is all you can do kind of things. And this is the thing I miss is the storytelling. If you ever get a chance to read the book Keys to Progress, John McCullum's compilation, you can get it at Milo. I'm sure you can get it anywhere. Keys to Progress by John McCullum. This and the Harry Pascal books, these are, there's stories in them. They're interesting. It's funny. I'll write a story in a book and someone says, why do you tell stories? And it's like, okay, what do you want to know? Well, how should I get big and strong? I'll say, well, you should squat 225 for 50 reps, and you should eat so much that it hurts. You should sleep 12 hours every night. You probably should bench press about 4. You're not deadlifting 5 to 6. Let's get there. And all of a sudden you hear all the pushback, like, what? So you want to hear a story about somebody who did that, right? Because I can write it. I can get this idea that people do programs. Come on. I've met people who've criticized me. They criticize me online. I've met them in real life. One thing you don't ever notice about them, none of them looks like they've ever lifted a weight in their life. I'm 3 times their age. I'm stronger than they are. Probably have better cardio. But boy, I tell you one thing, you get them on a typewriter, Yeah.
The good old typewriter.
Keyboard warriors out here.
But I'm a big fan of telling the story and having a little sarcasm, sense of humor, poke a little fun. Yeah.
And I got one rapid fire question for you. And that's, if all the kettlebells had to just vanish, they just all went somewhere, they're nowhere to be found, and you're able to keep 2 kettlebells for the rest of your life for yourself and for the people that you train, what 2 kettlebells would that be?
Double 20s.
Double 20s. I know somebody else who likes a double.
Oh, wow. I felt like I say a very similar answer to that. All
Now,
right.
I mean, obviously, I think these guys were both, I was a huge fan of the original 3 only, the 16, the 24, the 32. I kind of wish, truthfully, that we'd have stuck with that, because I think it really cleaned up a lot of things, standards and all. I mean, you've been there at certs where someone says, I'm supposed to snatch at 22. And I look at the guy like, you're like a full grown ass man.
I think this was the last cert we were in, and we were like, we both looked at whoever it was. Yeah.
It was like, God, I was 20 years old. I was 22 years older than the guy, and I took the 24, and but I like sometimes, and you'll find this as a coach, if you don't have a lot of options, you become a better coach. In fact, if you ever get a chance to read like my discus throwing book, I was at a school that didn't have a track and it didn't have a field, yet we were some of the best throwers nationally in the discus, javelin, and shot, because I had to outthink the lack of those things that are you would just think obvious. In my world, I call them givens. And so sometimes when you don't have a lot of options, you have to use this more. So if you're working with the female client who the 16 is the lowest you can go, well, all right, then what can we do? Well, that's when, one of you can elbow me and say, Dan, remember that funny things you say? You always make fun of the kettlebell deadlift. Yeah. Well, here's your example why you can use it with this woman. And, so I like, guys, I hope this comes across. I like solving problems. Remember I told you about the Coyote Point Kettlebell Club. The reason I like doing it so much is every week I had a new problem. We had people who'd never come there show up for the first time. So we had to change things. We had people who were there every time. We sometimes didn't have all the equipment we needed. Good. We just keep outthinking. You just keep, outrunning the problem. I like that. Yeah. That's my favorite part of coaching is, not, I say often, I don't say it enough anymore, but I used to always say deprivation increases capacity. So if you don't have a perfect thing, it makes you think. And it's interesting, if you think about any great insights you had as a coach, it's probably because you didn't have a perfect program. You didn't have a perfect facility. You didn't have a perfect, and so you had to kind of go, well, I can't do what these guys online are doing, but I can do this. And then and all of a sudden things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually those without resources tend end up being more resourceful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, Dan, this was a lot of fun. I think we went a little over time, but I think that's all good. I don't think people mind. So, thank you for gracing us with your time.
Absolutely, man. Good seeing.
Yes,
as well. And before we even end off this, I know that you mentioned that you had a website. Could you just tell the viewers here what's the website?
Oh, sure.
What they're gonna find in that website and how they can.
Well, you're gonna find the workout generator and about 1 million pages of documents you can read. You can spend the rest. I just had someone say, I went to the documents page, the download page is called, and there's a download in there that's like 400 pages. So I just, yeah. So it's called danjohnuniversity.com. Yes, it's a stupid name. I know that, but it's what it is. And it is what it is. And there's a thing in there called the workout generator where it goes right back to what we just said. You put the first question is, what equipment do you have? Because I can't, so what equipment, what do you know? And then you can make all these changes. The workout generator is what I had hoped the internet can do when I first started online. And my first blog, or whatever you call it, website, was in 1998. Well, that's what I wanted in 98. It just took, 20 something years for the technology to catch up. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Dan. This has been a great honor. We'd love to have you back again. I think this was really cool. And
Yeah, this is real easy for me. So anytime you want, if this is easy, so let's do it. And I'll see you guys in a couple months, right?
you will see us. We have a RKC2 coming up in February.
That's what I got to get ready. That's why I had to leave. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait.
yeah. So I know, yeah, that's what we got going on. So we'll be training for that. We'll do the Secret Service snatch test then. So
How fun would that be for you to nail both of those, huh?
oh, geez. All right. Well, we got to start now because
Yeah. Wait, 4 years. Yeah.
yeah, 4 years exactly. So my breakdancing dreams
Great
are done.
seeing you guys. Great seeing you.
Thank you.